Thank you very much for being with us today, ladies and gentlemen. First, before we begin, let me introduce to you Robert Miller. He's with the statewide prosecutor's office, and I asked him, I said, "Are you going to talk, Robert, in this press conference?" He says, "No, I'll do my talking in court." And we also have my dear friend Mark Britnell. He is the special agent in charge out of the Tampa office. This investigation absolutely unequivocally would not be possible without the cooperation and the teamwork and the partnership of our folks. It also wouldn't be possible without Governor Ron DeSantis and the Florida legislature. This is a safe case. As you know, it's money that was created by the legislature, signed by the governor, so that we could go after these folks dealing fentanyl and killing people across the state of Florida. This was one of the very first cases that you see here today. So I'm going to give you the highlights of this case, and then we'll accept questions after the fact. And I want to introduce you to Operation Ruski. It is a family affair. And it all started with Pilar Rivera, and she's married to Hector Baez Torres. And they apparently, or wanted everyone to believe, only ran legitimate businesses. On Highway 98 North in Lakeland, they had the bait shop, Ruski's Bait Shop, and Ruski's Motorcycle Parts and Repair Shop. And their people would have legitimate business. We find it ironic that why these businesses appeared legitimate, this is how they washed their money from their dope deals. So these businesses are operating. In fact, Hector got on to people for smoking marijuana. He said, "We can't have the odor of marijuana in our business. It's bad for business." So why he's telling his legitimate employees, which have nothing to do with the dope world, hey, no marijuana smoking here. It's bad for business. Here's what's really going on. When you look, there's Hector and his wife. That's the CEO and the CFO. His wife took care of all the money. She took care of the money not only for the legitimate business, but for the drug trade. And then you come down and you look, and this Jimmy Lee Baez Riviera, who's 23, she is the daughter of Pilar and Hector. And Miguel is her boyfriend. She is an assistant to Miguel. Miguel is the one that actually received the dope from the big-time dope dealers, and then he would distribute it down to the lieutenants, who would then sell it on the street. So Hector would order the drugs. He, for the most part, kept his hands off of the drugs. However, Miguel would be the one who made sure the drugs got to this level. Everyone boxed in red here is charged with racketeering. So when the investigation began, we thought, well, heck, we've got street-level drug dealing. We were buying fentanyl. Do you see this? I mean, what else do you put in a Ziploc bag? Yeah, that's right, a commercial Ziploc bag this size. So this is about 0.2 of a gram of flour that's to imitate 0.2 of a gram of fentanyl. And these are the people they're selling to. This was totally a street operation. So we started this investigation arresting people that were buying drugs from their dealers and distributors. We saw these folks. They were also entrepreneurs. Many of them would buy 5 bags for $25, maybe 10 bags, and then they would use part of it and sell part of it. So even though they were paying $5 a bag, they would sell it for a profit, at least enough to pay for their drug deal. So when we started this in January 12th, 2021, we were working the street, and all of a sudden, our detective said, "Oh my gosh, these folks are cranking out 500 to 1,000 bags of this a day in Lakeland from this one operation." So they needed to go further. So we set up wiretaps or communication interceptions through warrants. We saw that this immediately went across county lines. We were already working this investigation with FDLE and the safe money, and we always need our statewide prosecutor. Ashley Moody is the best, and she's on this, and she gave us the team of statewide prosecutors. So what did this tell us? It told us, okay, now we figured out that Pilar and Hector are the top of the organization. We defined the hierarchy. We figured out the next level was part of the family affair. We figured out who they were. Then we figured out the operators, and 2 of the operators are boyfriend and girlfriend, Wilma Fuentes and Luis. We also figured out that as these people at this level were arrested, they would quit letting them deal dope. They would distance themselves. We also figured out that because of the intricacies of this operation, our interception of communication solidified our racketeering charges. Now it's interesting. On June the 20th, our folks served a total of 6 search warrants. One was served by FDLE and Osceola. We served the other 5 here. And we seized a lot of things. We seized motorcycles. We wiped out and seized everything from the bait shop because we were able to funnel the money and see it follow back up to be laundered at the legitimate places. We seized guns. Ladies and gentlemen, I say this every time, and I'm going to say it once again, and you'll hear it the next time. People who want you to believe that drugs are low level and nonviolent are either mentally insane or they're flat out lying to you. We see 2 names in red here. This drug killed at least 2 people from fentanyl overdose. Now, we didn't track all of these folks. We arrested a total of 64 people. So we don't know how many others we Narcaned or were Narcaned to save their lives, or how many of these others of just this snapshot, because we quit arresting these street level people because it was putting heat on our ability to move up the chain of command. And then you have the guns. You know, Louis Vuitton. How many of you have a Louis Vuitton semi-automatic rifle? Hey, you ought to be trendy while you do this. Or when we went to serve the search warrant on Miguel, here's the interesting thing about Miguel. You know what happened? He had his gun. That's right. He had his gun he hid in the attic. We were sure that our detectives were going to end up in a shootout with Miguel. But after an hour and a half, our hostage and our hostage negotiators, and in this case, our barricade negotiators, talked him out of the attic, and we were able to arrest him and take this gun without a shootout. That's the talent of these detectives that worked this case. We seized legions of property, as I talked about. I've got to tell you about Miguel. Miguel earned $1 a bag for every bag he sold. Well, you think about it. $500 to $1,000 in cash a day is not bad. And Miguel told us upon his arrest, 30 years for $1. That's what he told us over and over and over after he was arrested. He should have thought about that ahead of time. Then he would have put his head in his hands and tell the detectives, I can't believe it. 30 years I'm going to get. 30 years for $1. Finally, he figured it out. But that wasn't all. He managed to have his wife tied up in it, or his girlfriend tied up in it, and her mama and her daddy. We figured the gross income was about $2.7 million during this operation. It's interesting that as we served these search warrants, that you had Wilma. Wilma wanted to kind of be on the sideline, but she delivered dope when Lewis was not available. Let me tell you what we discovered during the investigation. Lewis didn't miss his meals. Everything stopped while he had a lunch break. Everything. Well, Wilma would deliver the dope when he was on a lunch break. So his lunch got her wrapped up in a racketeering charge. We thought that was humorous. It's interesting that they said that when they were doing the undercover operation, they would see these folks buy 1 bag, 5 bags, 10 bags, resell. Then when their IRS money came, they would be buying 100 bags or 150 bags at a time. So IRS money contributed to the drug running and the drug using and the drug selling on the street level. Now, we could literally talk for a long time about all of the nuances of this case, but I think you've pretty well figured it out. Guns and dope equal violence and death. And why these fools can't figure out the obvious that we all understand is a surprise to me every day. But I want to turn this over once again to my colleague and my friend who is in charge of a great group of agents for FDLE who work with us every day on long-term, big-scale investigations.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning. On behalf of Commissioner Mark Glass, I'm Mark Brutnell, the Special Agent in charge for FDLE Tampa. I'm honored to be here today to stand alongside Sheriff Judd and our investigative team in the back. You guys did an amazing job on this case. Today's arrest, the Sheriff spoke about, is a SAFE case. The SAFE program, otherwise known as State Assistance for Fentanyl Eradication, was signed into law by Governor DeSantis a year ago, this upcoming Monday, July 1st of 2023. The Polk County Sheriff's Office was ready and willing and able to help out in this cause. This case here was the first SAFE case in the state of Florida. It was signed on in July 14th of 2023. And like the majority of our SAFE cases, this was a case that was targeting drug trafficking organizations that were peddling poison to our citizens. So I pulled the numbers for the statewide SAFE initiative for the first year, and they're very, very impressive. So to date, we've had statewide 110 SAFE investigations across the state. We've had $14.7 million obligated towards these investigations. And the numbers speak for themselves. We've seized over 37 kilos of fentanyl, 30,000 fentanyl pills, 55 kilos of cocaine, 20 kilograms of methamphetamine, almost $500,000 in currency seized. To the sheriff's point earlier, 72 firearms, and an astonishing 410 arrests. And that does not include this case. Again, these target the drug trafficking organizations to try to keep our families safe. I'm not going to say that the sheriff and I are very competitive, but we're very competitive. So those cases, the Polk County Sheriff's Office has been a stalwart in this. They have probably the most cases of any agency in Florida. The Tampa Bay region, I'm proud to say, has had a very good response to this SAFE program, and we've put a lot of bad people in jail that deserve to be in jail, and we've taken a lot of drugs off the street. It's not for a lack of trying, it's for partnerships, as the sheriff spoke, between Attorney General Moody's office, FTLE, the Polk County Sheriff's Office. The teamwork is amazing, and I do expect us to be here a lot more with SAFE cases moving forward, as the legislature and the governor have, for this upcoming budget, have again assigned us lots of money to keep this initiative going. So again, I want to thank everyone in the back room, investigators, great job. I'm very proud to stand here for this case. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sheriff.
Before I open the floor up to questionings, I want to highlight once again, the SAFE money allows us to operate at bigger levels and higher levels because it allows us to deal with kilos of fentanyl and to be one of the big guys, one of the big dope dealers, except that we're not. We're the dope cops, and we're able to interact. So the legislature, which normally doesn't get the credit, the Governor DeSantis, which normally doesn't get the credit for a big drug case, understand that because of their leadership, we're able to save lives in the state of Florida. And that's what we've done by taking this fentanyl off of the street. And once again, look at the guns and look at the drugs and look at the dead people and tell me, why is it a good thing to legalize mind-altering drugs? And all across this nation, in Oregon, in California, we've seen them either decriminalize or reduce felonious drug charges to misdemeanors in California, where they don't hold people accountable, while the people of this country and of this state and in this county are dying from drugs. We're going to do all we can to protect your children and keep them safe. We're going to do all we can to make sure that people don't die as a result of the drug or of the gun. But look at this once again. When you have this kind of gun, we have detectives that are facing this in order to keep this country and this state and this county safe. And they do it every day and every night while you're able to sleep peacefully in your home. Questions?
Sheriff, a lot of us know Pilar and her daughter because they were related to that 3-year-old boy who was tragically killed in Lakeland earlier this year. Should we assume, what are your thoughts about any connection between fentanyl trafficking and that shooting?
Well, Hector and Pilar are the grandparents of the 3-year-old that was murdered in a shooting in the city of Lakeland. The city police department is investigating that case. That is their other daughter, not this daughter. How did the shooting occur? Guns. Why did the shooting occur? Drug deal gone bad? Death of a 3-year-old baby, a beautiful 3-year-old baby? Guns? Drugs? We've got to understand. You've got to hold people accountable and make them responsible for having guns and selling drugs and moving drugs in the community. Because if it weren't for these people using, these people couldn't sell drugs. But it's already cost Hector and Pilar a beautiful 3-year-old grandchild. But it's not related to this investigation. That was his other daughter And I'm not saying it was not part of their drugs someplace else, but it didn't wrap in this investigation.
Is DCF taking custody of any of the children?
I'm not sure the current status, but I can assure you of this, that we report to DCF. And there some of the charges. This is why, you know, they just don't pay any attention, okay? They don't think it's going to occur to them, but let me show you this picture once again. If you see Jimmy Lee, who is a beautiful young lady, and Miguel, a sharp-looking young man, you think, oh, that's a nice couple. They had a room dedicated to packaging this. It was the room directly across from the playroom of the 2- and 4-year-old child that they had together. And DCF knows that, and that was reported to DCF when we arrested them. So they are packaging fentanyl that he's wearing a mask for to protect him, and yet that's going on in the room adjacent to where the 2- and 4-year-old children played. You think it's a problem? I know it's a problem.
So all those people on the bottom 2 rows were buyers and
And-
also maybe sellers?
Yeah, they were reselling on, some of them were reselling, but they were purchasing to use. And some of them, the entrepreneurs, were purchasing enough to resell so that they could make enough money to pay for their drug habit.
Do you know which 2 died?
They're in red here. Okay?
Sheriff, I was just wondering, where was the fentanyl coming from? Is there ties or connections to another country?
Right. Well, obviously, here's this drug supply. But we know that the fentanyl's coming out of Mexico. As we've discussed in our other investigations, it's coming out of Mexico. Sinaloa is where a lot of it's coming from. And it's coming into California. It's being distributed. I had an ABC Los Angeles reporter here 2 or 3 weeks ago talking with me because they're distributing it all over the nation through LAX. And in addition to that, if you watch that 3 series or look it up, nobody's policing for it at LAX. No one. At the end of the day, that's where it's coming from. We, on one of the previous operations, safe operations that we worked with our colleagues from FDLE, we tracked it to a safe house and couldn't get the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office to knock on the door with us to serve a first-degree felony Florida warrant because they don't knock on doors because it's dangerous. Well, that's why it's dangerous, because you're not putting anybody's butt in jail. It's not dangerous here because we arrest people and take guns away from criminals that don't have any business with guns. But that's not happened in Los Angeles. So the flood of drugs here is being enabled by the crazy, crazy policies in California. And it's flooding across our porous border. It's a train wreck every day. And yet we watch government officials elected at the national level, the federal level, and the state level do nothing while your relatives die in the United States because of their lack of interest. That's not happening here. We care about your relatives and your children, and we're going to do everything we can to keep them safe. But when the sale of drugs like this can cause a 3-year-old baby to be murdered, that's a scary thing.
Why did this take 3 years? Is that typical for an undercover investigation?
Because we started working this at a street level thinking it's just another street case, okay? And then it was, whoa, this is not just a street case. And then it was, well, there's legitimate businesses that are fronts that are being used to laundry. So then we go through the wiretap process, and that's another process. And then we end up with the search warrants. But this is not the only case we're working on in the last 3 years. You have seen us over and over and over do big, safe cases with a lot of fentanyl. And it's not just because we were working on this one case, but we're working on a lot of other cases, just like we're going to be here before you in the future months talking about other big cases. Well, they're being worked on while this one's being worked on, while the others are being worked on. So quite frankly, there's enough volume of this, it just takes a while to get to it all. And this one we saw got extra complicated. These people were good. You didn't see them selling drugs at a local level out of their legitimate business. Now, why? Because they didn't want to put heat on the legitimate business. Hector's getting on guys, don't smoke marijuana here. It's bad for business. So it was a complicated investigation. The detectives were fantastic, but they were working a lot of other major investigations at the same time as well. So when you put it all together, it took a little while to get it to where it is today.
Sheriff, did you say how long they've been doing this? Like how long they've had the legitimate businesses, how long they've been?
I don't know how long they've had the legitimate businesses. We started looking at it as a street case in 21. And then during this investigation, because our detectives are simply the very best, we go, hey, this is tied to these guys who are running this business. Then then it takes a while to develop and write your probable cause. It's not easy to get an intercept.
Right, but it was like millions of dollars they laundered, you said, so
Yeah.
they've been doing it for a long time, you know?
Not a long time. I mean, when you're selling 500 to 1,000 bags a day, you know, they're cranking out some street dope. If you don't think that there's a lot of street dope being used and sold, that means you're either naive or we've done a real good job of keeping these dopers away from what I call civilized, normal, law-abiding society.
Sheriff, is there anything the department can do to stop the drug floating over here before we go to this kind of operation?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. Is there anything we can do to stop the drug flow? Yeah, we can seal off the border. We can quit letting the criminals flow across this border and bring in their drugs. We can cut that. It's a wide open faucet now. We can ramp it down to a drip. I'm not naive enough to tell you we can stop it all, but we could bring it down to a drip. But that gets into other policy, federal policy. What's the president doing? You know, this political office, that political office, but the bottom line is the criminals are pushing illegal immigrants across here, and these illegal immigrants want to come here to do better for their family. So while all the officials are tied up with the infrastructure and dealing with these folks, then they're flooding victims of human trafficking and drugs and guns across the border here. The cartels are manufacturing floods of people to tie up the resources while they flood dope across this country to poison us in the United States. So the cartels are taking advantage of the horrible border policy, and the federal government gets an F.
So, in reading the affidavit, a lot of these deals took place at McDonald's, Walmart parking lots, Publix parking lots, and clearly could have gone sideways very quickly. Who picked the drug deal spots?
Usually the drug deal spot is picked by the guy that's delivering the drugs where he feels comfortable. If we can control the drug deal spot, we want it in the most remote area possible. The drug dealer doesn't want that. He wants the crowds of people around so he or she can blend in. So that raises the risk to the community as well. We have systems and processes in place to minimize the exposure and the risk to the public. But understand, these dope dealers want to do their drug deals in a very crowded parking lot. They're evil people. They don't care about you. They don't care whether you die or a 3-year-old dies. They don't care whether there's a shootout. Do you think these shootouts in the streets that you're seeing over in Tampa right now are because the chess game went bad last weekend? No. It's a drug deal gone bad. Are gangsters fighting for territory for drug deals? And until we turn the heat up on the rule makers across this nation, that, hey, we're tired of it. We're tired of the shootings. Now, do you see them running and gunning every night in Polk County? No, because we're on their butt every night in Polk County. But you see it all across the nation, and you see innocent people dying. And it's all about this and territories. That's what it's about. Anything else? God bless you all. Have a great weekend. We'll see you when the next fools violate the law. Take care.